We're going to continue talking about the M1 Grand. I think I'll take this part and give you a little bit of history and talk a little bit about the accessories. From the history side, the rifle was developed by John C. Grand. I'm sure I mispronounced his name. It's spelled G-A-R-A-N-D, Garand, I believe. He was a Canadian, but he was working for the United States government, trying to develop an auto-loading rifle. And there was a lot of attempts by a lot of people. Browning, Thompson, a lot of people were trying to develop them after World War I, but nobody had any real success. And Mr. Grand came up with an action design that seemed to work. And in fact, it was so difficult to develop. They had a round called the 276, which was not as powerful as the 30-06, but it made the rifle easier to develop. Well, long story short, he developed an action that could not only handle the 276, but ultimately, after years of development, it was able to chamber and shoot the 30-06. There's probably a lot of politics involved there, but the Department of the Army wanted to upgrade to the 30-06, which was their standard ball ammunition at the time. So Mr. Grand developed this rifle in the end. He developed a gas system, the gas tube here, which the op rod fits into, and really the secret to his design was the fact this not only could operate the action, but it could dissipate the heat. So the rifle didn't get hot, and it could repeatedly fire over and over with very powerful ammunition. The 30-06 develops pressures that are really high. It gets up into the 45,000 pounds per square inch, which is tremendous. Also, his bolt was very, very strong. It had 3 locking lugs, 2 in the front, 1 in the rear, like a bolt-action Mauser or an Enfield, or excuse me, the Springfield, the 03. It turned out to be a very reliable, robust, and strong rifle. It was formidable. There's lots of arguments, and I tend to agree with them. This is probably the best rifle developed and used in World War II by any infantry. It had some shortcomings, but overall, I don't think it could be beat. And after the war, it continued evolving. Numerous parts were changed, things were improved, and ultimately, this rifle evolved into the M14, or in this case the M1A, which is the civilian equivalent. It still really is the M1, just some modernization. One thing they did, you'll notice the gas chamber is gone in the op rod area. They've shortened it to a piston design, a lot like the M1 carbine, a shorter op rod, so that made the rifle smaller and lighter and shorter. They developed it with a detachable 20-round box magazine. Of course, this rifle used the new ammunition, the 7.62 or 7.62 by 51 NATO cartridge, still 30 caliber, still nearly as powerful as the 30-06, but it was a little bit lighter ammunition and easier to work with, and of course a shorter action was required. But the same sights, same basic operating functions. A very nice rifle, definitely one of my favorites. So let's talk a little bit about the accessories. First thing I want to talk about is the slings. Here on this rifle, I've got the early sling, the 1907, which was issued with the 03s, and it was issued up until World War II. It's a nice sling, but it's a little bit hard to manipulate in the field, but it makes a great target sling. Enough said about that. For the M1, they developed the cotton sling. The cotton sling, as you can see, is simpler in design and much easier to manipulate. Still very effective as a sling for shooting, but a lot easier to deploy. And then later on, for the M14, this sling became same sling, but they used nylon, which is what I use on my field weapons. It's just nicer, it's smoother, easier to manipulate. I just like them better. It's a concession I make. Bayonets. Bayonets evolved as well. I'm going to show you the first bayonet for the M1 Grand was developed from the old 03. And what they did is they took the World War I bayonet and they cut it down. They used to be about this long, and you can see where they've cut them down and made a new point on them, came up with a new scabbard for them. So this is a holdover from World War I, and it's a little bit different. For one thing, it's got a ring that fits over the top of the barrel, and then the locking catch, which is right here, you probably can't see it, is small. Not only does it lock onto the rifle, but it locks into the bayonet scabbard. That's just old school. You gotta kind of like that old stuff. They don't do that anymore. They've gone to a different method, but this is how it fit on the rifle. As you can see, it would fit over the barrel and then lock into the locking lug. That's how it worked. Later on, during World War II, they came out with a dedicated Grand bayonet. As you can see, it's shorter, it's more like a knife. And they redesigned the gas plug at the end here so that it would accept this little button. So this button fits in to the plug. That's how it works, instead of going over the barrel. So when you install it onto the rifle, it's like that. It's locked on, it's real simple, very strong, and it does get the bayonet off the end of the rifle, which probably helps in accuracy, but it certainly makes it a lot lighter and easy to use. So there's the bayonets. I think next we should talk about, let's talk about the ammunition. The ammunition is specific for the M1. They used what they called M2 ammunition. M2 ammunition was designed for the M1 Grand, 50 grain bullets in a 30-06 case. This is the clip for the M1. This is a loaded clip for the M1. And when you use it in the rifle, you'll insert, I'll use this one as an example. You would insert the entire clip into the rifle. And when you do that, it's referred to as en-bloc, meaning in mass. So the clip, which holds 8 rounds, the entire unit is inserted into the rifle and the action closes up on it. On the last round, it not only ejects the spent brass, but it also ejects the clip out of the rifle and locks it in the open position like this one, so that you can simply reload by inserting another en-bloc clip. So there's the ammunition. Let's talk a little bit about how it was carried. This cartridge belt, ammo belt, which is designed to be carried or used around the waist, was a leftover, a holdover from World War I. And originally, these were designed to have 2 5-round stripper clips of 30-06 ammunition in them. But it worked just as well for the 8-round en-bloc clips for the M1. So these were utilized in World War II and even in Korea. There's 5 compartments on each belt, so that gives you, there's 5 per side, 10 total. That gives you an 80-round cartridge capacity. And then ammo that was issued out in the field would come in these bandoliers, which you could sling over your shoulder. And each one of these bandoliers, I don't know if you can see it or not, I'll hold it up here. Each one of these bandoliers had 6 pockets, and these pockets had en-bloc clips in them with a cardboard inside to keep them from rattling around. So you could simply grab a few of these, sling them over your shoulder, and you could carry a lot of ammunition for an M1, although it starts to get heavy pretty fast. You know what I was going to tell you? Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. Something about this rifle. I want to bring this up because it's one way to acquire Grands, if you know what you're doing and you're looking for. Like this one back here. This is another one I have that I acquired because it didn't shoot well. In fact, the guy I got it from said at 100 yards, he couldn't even see where the bullets were falling. That's how bad it was. It turned out that it looked like it had been dropped because the front sight was nerfed up and the crown was bad. So I bought the rifle for $250, got it home, realized there was nothing wrong with the barrel once I got a gauge in it. It was just the crown. So I re-crowned this barrel, put a national match sight on it, and this is a great shooter. It's not the most beautiful rifle in the world because, as you can see, the action is a green parkerizing where the barrel is the dark gray, but still, nevertheless, it was really a nice rifle. Anyway, that's it regarding the M1 Garand. We'll move on to another part here. So we'll see you in part 3.